Okay, hello everyone. I hope you can hear me. Wait. Okay, good. So, welcome to this meeting. I will just say 2 words in Italian because we have a large group of Italian participants to this webinar, and I will shift back to English. Benvenuti a tutti, vedo dai vostri nomi tante persone che credo facciano parte del gruppo dei facilitatori digitali e so che è stato promosso questo evento presso di voi, avete aderito in molti. Ovviamente l'evento sarà in inglese, speriamo che riusciate a capire e a seguire il più possibile. Torno all'inglese. For all the participants, Mark Kellin and Aisling Johnston from An Cosán will be presenting this webinar, and which is part of a series of webinars that we call Inspiring Experiences webinars of the DigComp Hub project, which is a project which is running until the end of June this year, and which has been promoting the awareness and the knowledge of the DigComp framework in Europe and beyond. And we have also designed a short training course for educators, adult educators in particular, on the framework, DigComp, and how to use it in the context of adult education. You can find this webinar will be recorded, and the slides which will be presented in the webinar will be shared at the end in a public folder that will be sent to, a link to it will be sent to all of you. And so if you have any questions that come to your mind during the presentation, just write them in the chat, and I will forward them to the speakers at the end of their presentation. And for the Italian people, if you want, in this case, you can also write the questions in Italian and we'll translate them into English. Okay, so Mark and Aisling, the floor is to you. Thank you very much for joining us in this webinar. And I'm very curious to hear your interesting experience with digital inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefano. Good afternoon, everybody. It's fantastic to be here today. We really appreciate Stefano's invitation for us in An Cosán to be with you today to share our experiences and how we brought DigComp into action. So this essentially is a case study of An Cosán's pioneering digital inclusion work in Ireland. Just to introduce myself, my name is Mark Kelly. I'm currently Policy and Communications Manager with An Cosán. I'm relatively new to this role. For the previous 5 years or so, I was the Digital Inclusion Coordinator at An Cosán, and I'll let Aisling, my colleague, introduce herself.
Hi everyone, you're very welcome, and thanks Stefano for this wonderful opportunity to share An Cosán's journey with digital inclusion. My name is Aisling and I'm An Cosán's digital skills tutor. My background is community education, where I taught childcare, community care and digital skills.
Thanks, Aisling. Just in relation to the session agenda, we're going to cover off a brief background on An Cosán, talk through our digital inclusion journey to date. We'll look at why we decided to work with DigComp and under the banner of digital inclusion. We'll talk about how we developed a digital inclusion tool, digital stepping stones, as well as what we're currently working on in terms of our Get Yourself Online campaign platform and developing a digital literacy community of practice. We have a lot to get through, and we hope to allow some time at the end for questions, as Stefano mentioned. So just a brief background in terms of An Cosán. An Cosán is the Irish or Gaelic for the path. We're approaching our 40th anniversary next year from when we were first founded. We were established in a suburb in West Dublin, which is the capital of Ireland, and it was a very socially deprived area. And the vision of the founders of An Cosán was that if poverty is to be transformed, then education is the key to that, and that education is the path to transforming an individual and a community's opportunities and prospects. We have since scaled our reach from our original base to be a national organisation with over 220 community partners across Ireland. The model of An Cosán is very much an exemplar of community education in Ireland, in that we combine adult community education, pioneering the blending of face-to-face and online education through educational technology. We combine that with early years education and care in order to give what we call our little ones the best start in life. And it also allows for mothers to avail of and access education and get the supports they need. An Cosán is passionate about providing what we call our crucial wraparound supports and services to support adult learners in accessing education and transforming their lives through education. And these supports include counselling, family support, mentoring, coaching, tutoring, and internships. And very much underpinning all of that work is our efforts to engage with and utilise educational technology and to break down barriers in relation to access, and that's through our digital inclusion work. At the core of our work, our mission really is to empower women and children who are left furthest behind through learning, leadership and enterprise, and that very much informs all of our activities and all of our ambitions and goals. Specifically in relation to An Cosán's digital inclusion journey, this started over 10 years ago now, when in terms of scaling our national reach, we were very much pioneered using educational technology to take our face-to-face programs and make them accessible to communities across Ireland through using technology. And that was critical for us in our mission to ensure no one is left behind, especially in disadvantaged communities across Ireland. In that sense, we became very aware of and came face to face with the issues that can affect people in engaging with educational technology. And around this time, back in 2018, research was published in the Digital Economic and Society Index, which showed Ireland had one of the lowest levels of basic digital skills in the European Union. That really shocked us as a very dynamic technology hub with the likes of headquarters at the likes of Google, Microsoft and Apple and all those here. So we have a very well-educated, highly skilled ICT workforce, but half of our population were lacking basic digital skills. An Cosán has also been, sorry, actually, just go back for 1 second.
Sorry.
No problem. An Cosán has also been in a very long-term partnership with Accenture. And it's been a community and corporate partnership dedicated to improving employability and digital skills for over 10 years now. And around that time in 2018, research was showing that in the near future, at that point, 9 out of 10 jobs would require some level of digital skills. And that really was a concern for us when half of Ireland's adult population, didn't possess basic digital skills. So it mobilized us to do something about it. It also aligned at the time of the start of the European Union's digital decade, which set a target of 80% of adults in Europe with basic digital skills by 2030, which we thought if only half of our adult population have basic digital skills, we have a lot of work to do in that 10-year to try to achieve that ambitious goal. Just as we were rolling out our digital inclusion work, something that we couldn't have foreseen happening was the COVID-19 pandemic. And while all our lives and how we work, how we learn, and how we communicate and collaborate with people changed dramatically through having to use and being forced to use technology, it's almost counterintuitive that the digital divide didn't shrink. It actually became much more multifaceted. And we saw that students were risking losing out in their online teaching because the pandemic was creating its own digital divide. The pandemic also exposed the digital divide facing parents in terms of access to broadband, access to devices, access to lack of skills and competences around digital as well. So that really was a big issue. And as the COVID pandemic went on, even Forbes was reporting that the digital divide had become a chasm as a result of the pandemic. I think was also interesting at that time was that the actual inventor of the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee, said that the COVID-19 pandemic demonstrates the gross inequality of a world where almost half the population is unable to connect to the internet. And even as the pandemic was raging, he was telling a high-level UN meeting that our number one focus must be to close the digital divide. So in terms of our approach to trying to tackle this huge issue, as I mentioned, we were working very closely with Accenture. So as with all things, we started with research. We undertook market scans and testing for suitable solutions. And we really wanted to take an adult learning approach and using kind of learning theory to try to find ways of being able to understand where a person's competency currently lies. So we looked at assessment solutions, skills framework analysis, undertook training needs analysis, and undertook community-based consultations, including learner workshops, educational technology workshops with Accenture's technical teams. We developed a proof of concept and started a train the trainer program for tutors and community organizations that we're connected with. And this is really all to try to raise awareness and harvest feedback about the lived experience in relation to the digital divide in Ireland at that time. And that was supported by SULIS, who is the government agency for further and higher education and training in Ireland. At the core of this, as I mentioned, that using adult learning theory, we wanted to understand where learners were at and to be able to support their learning and to develop their skills to try to close that gap. So Digital Stepping Stones is a digital assessment tool. It uses assessment for learning. So while people are using it, they're actually learning new information and understanding as they're going along. And again, underpinning this was very much about trying to encourage a growth mindset towards lifelong learning, digital learning, and adult and community learners. It was very important for people to understand that digital and technology is constantly evolving. So what you need to know now is not what you're going to need to know in the near future. And we can see that already with AI coming in the space of half a decade. We couldn't have even imagined that at that time. But that's where the growth mindset is really important for people to understand, that you have to keep learning, you have to keep developing, and you can't just say that's enough, because the way technology works is it's constantly changing and adapting. So back in 2019, we envisaged an Ireland where everyone can avail of the life-enhancing benefits of having the digital skills they need. And I'm proud to say that today almost 10,000 people have used our Digital Stepping Stones assessment tool to understand their personal level of digital competence and their gaps. So why DigComp? And as mentioned before, why digital inclusion? We do get asked that a lot as to why digital inclusion is the term that we wanted to focus on. Essentially, we couldn't have developed these programs without DigComp. When we did that framework analysis, DigComp stood out to us because it was a digital competence framework for citizens. It wasn't just for learners. It wasn't just for educators. It wasn't for employment purposes. It was around citizens and being able to be active citizens in a digital society. So as part of our research, we saw that digital competence was described as a universal and basic need for all citizens for working, living, and learning in the knowledge society. And as far back as 2004, digital competence was described as an essential requirement for life and a survival skill, which is quite, hard hitting to think of it at that time. And actually, we'll kind of reference this again in terms of where that's still an issue. And as Tim Berners-Lee said, when you've got a global population where half of the world can't access the internet, that's a problem in terms of an essential requirement for life and a survival skill in 2020s. In terms of our digital inclusion work, we, from a social inclusion perspective, we don't speak to social exclusion. We try to be very positive in how we speak to our learners and about being socially included rather than excluded. And that falls in line with what we wanted to do with digital inclusion. We didn't want to speak about being digitally excluded because that can be limiting and quite negative. And as I mentioned, we get asked an awful lot about what is digital inclusion, what does it mean? And there's a very good graphic there from the National Digital Inclusion Alliance in the United States in terms of how they describe the issue. They say the digital divide is the issue, digital equity is the goal, and digital inclusion in the work. And that really makes sense to us, that it's the digital inclusion work that will help us to achieve, one hopes, digital equity in the near future. We also really take a position in terms of really advocating at a national level around digital inclusion. And you can see there, nobody was speaking about in the national media around the digital literacy gap in Ireland, that 1 in 2 Irish adults were lacking basic digital skills. So we launched a campaign to raise awareness, as I mentioned, to raise awareness around that. Pictured in the middle there is our CEO, Heidi Foster. An Cosán was invited to actually launch a new government strategy, Adult Literacy for Life, which was seeking to address those literacy gaps that were identified. That was back in 2022. It's a 10-year strategy. And only last December, Heidi, who has a background in human rights, was invited by a Northern Ireland organisation called Advice NI, which offers advice to citizens, to speak at a conference to raise awareness of how digital skills should be seen as a human right. So if we go back to that 2004 piece of a survival skill, an essential requirement for life, we're still talking about it. And that conference in Belfast in December, that was a lot of the participants in that had never joined the dots between digital literacy, digital skills being a human right. And we got a lot of requests to speak more about that over the past couple of weeks. So it's still an issue. It's still an emerging topic for discussion. So just I think shows there's still a lot of advocacy work that still needs to be done. Just in terms of Adult Literacy for Life, as I mentioned, it's a 10-year strategy, and we very much are in line with the objectives of that from a digital perspective. We were involved and supported the development of it. And as I said, Heidi was invited to actually launch it, which was a huge honour and very important that we were situated in that space. But just to give a sense of the literacy issue, almost 1 in 5 Irish adults struggle with reading and understanding everyday text. 1 in 4 adults have difficulties in using maths every day, and that number is actually increasing, and it's going the wrong way. And almost 1 in 2 Irish adults lacked basic digital skills. And the Adult Literacy for Life goal for digital literacy is in line with the EU target of 80% of Irish adults with basic digital skills by 2030. And to speak about digital stepping stones, I'm going to pass over to Aisling.
Thanks, Mark. So digital stepping stones, what is it? So digital stepping stones is a self-assessment tool that can encourage learners to develop a growth mindset around their digital literacy growth. It's free to use. It's available on all search engines. There's no registration required, which, coming from a tutor's perspective, is really, really helpful. You might be working with citizens or learners whose literacy levels are so low that they actually don't have an email address. So we know and understand that the registration process and everything that online that you have to sign up for requires an email address. So the beauty of this assessment tool is that it doesn't require a registration. We also, Mark mentioned a little bit there about Get Yourself Online platform. It's also available on our Get Yourself Online platform. And when they complete the assessment tool at the end, they are given an option to put in an email if they have one to get their results. But if they don't, they can put in the carers, the supervisors, the support workers, or the educators' email, and the full set of results then will be sent to that email. And then you can then sit with that citizen or learner and do a one-to-one with them. Or in my case, I found it really, really useful for groups. So to assess where your group is at as a whole, and kind of figure out yourself where to start with that group. So the assessment, we say approximately 15 minutes to complete. So obviously depending on the literacy levels, of the learner themselves, it could take longer, but generally around 15 minutes. This slide is the slide I use all the time, the trainer program. And the reason why I kept it in there is just to say that we have incorporated training into our trainer program on DigComp, so that they can see how it aligns and how we've used the framework within digital stepping stones. So every question will align with one of the 5 competencies, and within then each section you'll have another question on one of the 21 competency areas. So the proficiency level for digital stepping stones is the foundation level 1 to 2. So they're recognizing and identifying as they work their way through the questions. So it aligns with understanding where their own digital competence needs to be improved and updated to be able to support others with their own digital competency development, to seek opportunities for self-development, and to keep up to date with digital evolution. So how do I complete it? What do I do? What does it look like? So this is the steps to complete digital stepping stones. So you would simply log on to digitalsteppingstones.ie and press start to begin. You'll be then guided through 2 sections, part 1 and part 2. So the first part is how I feel, and the second part is my skills. And another, I guess, uniqueness I felt anyway when I was introduced to this tool as an educator was the fact that it measures the learners or citizens' confidence levels. So there are, to my awareness, I hadn't been introduced to any other digital literacy assessment tool that was actually also considering a citizen's confidence and not just competence. So it's really nice for the learner to also to be able to see, well, actually, I just need to develop on my confidence. I'm more skilled than I thought. So the third step then, having completed, is to enter your email or your support workers or educators' email address to get the full set of results then. So there's a snapshot on the left-hand side there of the results. So Niamh completes digital stepping stones, and she comes to the end, and just before she puts in her email, she's been given a little snapshot of where she's at. And as you can see, going back to Mark saying we're trying to encourage a growth mindset all at the time. So they're not given A's or B's or 50% or 40%. They're given a nice progress bar. All of the language used as well is keeping it nice and positive. So it's how you feel, progress bar, my skills. So you're either on your way, you're making progress, or in some instances, some people will be given a result that they almost know it all. So we never know it all. You'll only get to almost know it all. So that's what the snapshot of results looks like. And then when we open the email, we'll see a full detailed set of results then, which I love this part because this is where the assessment becomes a piece of learning in itself. So they will see the questions that they're asked, they will see the correct answers, and then they will see the answers that they gave. So whether they're doing that on their own or they're doing that sitting side by side with yourself, walking them through it, they start to discover things they didn't already know here, so they can read through their results. And then for the educators, then when I'm in the trainer program, there is, for us, we can see where they are at in terms of percentages. So 0 to 25, if somebody or your whole group is only on their way, you know that you're starting from the beginning. You know that the digital literacy levels are extremely low. Whereas if you're a group are scoring 75 to 100, at least on DigComp 2.1, this is, you know that they almost know it all. So maybe a little bit more inquiry, perhaps they just need some direction in terms of what it is they want to do. For example, if they wanted to do a course, they could come away with almost know it all. And perhaps when you get deep further into the results, you'll discover that it's perhaps digital content creation or communication and collaboration is a big one, where a lot of learners and citizens I see are not aware of how to collaborate more so in an online space. So this, at the very end of the results, it's important to note that these results are personalized to that individual and unique to the individual as to how they answered each question. So these are the gaps. So any gaps that's found through answering the questions, they'll be given out some links. So this is before now we started to create our own curriculum. So when we were teaching trainers how to use this tool, and learners, we were getting feedback from everybody. The feedback was that the educators actually didn't have the confidence or knowledge or skills to be able to create curriculum for the learner or learners just by using these links themselves. So it was too much work. Now we did leave them in there anyway, even though what we went on to do was to then create curriculum for the educators and the support workers, so that there would be a next step, like a seamless step from the assessment tool into courses. But before we did that, this is what we had, and then based on the feedback then that we got, went into our next steps of developing a Get Yourself Online curriculum. I'm going to hand that over to Mark, and he's going to walk you through that.
Thank you, Aisling. So as Aisling said, when we first start rolling out digital stepping stones through our National Train the Trainer program, people found it very useful, especially the kind of the quick 15-minute being able to understand where a learner or a group of learners are in their digital competence and confidence. But as Aisling mentioned, the feedback we kept getting was, what next? Don't have the time, don't have the resources, don't have the confidence. So we knew we weren't finished at that point. We knew we had more to do. But in terms of what we did immediately was to launch a national campaign, as I mentioned, to raise awareness around the digital literacy gaps. So we launched that, as I said, in 2022. It was launched by the Minister for Further and Higher Education in Ireland, Simon Harris, who went on to become Taoiseach, and he very much got behind the literacy challenges that Ireland was facing and is facing. The aim of the campaign was to raise awareness and equip adults with across the country basic digital literacy skills, highlighting the target of 80% of adults with basic digital skills by 2030, which is both the Adult Literacy for Life strategy and the EU Digital Decade goal. And critical to that was recruiting local digital champions to join our campaign, because we very much see, like ourselves, this will require on the ground people at the coalface, being equipped with the competence, confidence, and tools to be able to support local people if we're to try to reach that 80% of adults with basic digital literacy skills by 2030. A lot of the adults that we're talking about are not going to join a course. They're not going to join a sign up to a program of learning. They're not going to look for accreditation in order to do this. This is about very much adult learning at a local community education level in order to address those digital gaps and digital skills deficiencies. So what is Get Yourself Online? Our approach was to, as I said, focus on equipping community organizations and community educators to deliver digital skills training at a local level to adults to build the confidence and capacity of using skills. And really what we're seeing, and this is what fed into the next step in terms of the curriculum, was that these community organizations, they're not really well-resourced organizations. You know, budgets are always tight. Time is limited, capacity is limited. So while they were saying we like digital stepping stones, we just don't have the time to actually produce and create courses or language or learning programs. We just really don't have the time. And obviously, like underscoring all of this is our belief that having basic digital skills is critical, supporting lifelong learning, active citizenship, employability, and inclusion. And they're the core objectives of many of the community organisations around Ireland. So this is a critical space for us to really try to empower and to increase the resilience of these organisations in terms of digital literacy. So if they were coming back to us saying, we like the assessment, but we don't have a next step, we basically had to say, let's see what we can do about that. So what we did was we created Get Yourself Online as a e-learning platform. And the objective again of this is to empower lives through digital inclusion. And what it does is it brings in digital stepping stones, but it also adds curriculum to the assessment to create that seamless next step. This is free. The work has been done. It can be used across Ireland. It's accessible everywhere, and it is something that is designed very much from a community education perspective as well. So, as Aisling was talking about, the 5 competences are now in DigComp, which were used as the assessment, have now become 5 competence, which are courses within Get Yourself Online, all based on the 21 sub-competences across information data literacy, communication, collaboration, content creation, safety, and problem solving. So what an educator can do is they can get the results, they can see where the biggest gaps are, or the biggest areas for improvement are, and they can guide somebody to maybe doing one course. Each of the courses around 15 minutes, each module is about 15 minutes. Now somebody can, and we have had learners who start a course 1, competence 1, and work right through the 5 courses and the 21 competencies. But that, not everybody has the time or the ambition to do that. So you can do a short learning intervention, for want of a better phrase, and say, look, just do one course, build your competence in that area. You can do digital stepping stones again, and that helps build that growth mindset as well, because they've achieved it, they've completed it, it's adult learning, and for many people, it's probably the first piece of learning that they'll have done in a very long time. So
and it's also, sorry,
go ahead.
Max, I was
Sorry,
just
go
going
ahead.
to
Yep.
say, it's also really, really, really useful for educators or anybody working within the community, for the educator themselves. So I've used it on a big screen, for example, where your learners in front of you or your citizens in front of you mightn't even have a device. They might have a phone, some of them mightn't have a smartphone, where you can actually use the curriculum content and the course content if you just have a screen. And we also have on our community practice, which we'll get to later, we also have PDF files of the curriculum as well, which they can print as well. So sorry, Mark.
Nope. Well said. Thanks, Aisling. So as Ashley mentioned, in terms of DigComp for digital stepping stones, that's based on foundation levels 1 to 2. In terms of the curriculum development, we wanted to take it to the next step. This is to take it to the next level so that people are developing and, and going forward. So most of the Get Yourself Online curriculum is based on the intermediate level 3, but some of them move into level 4. So it depends on the competence in itself. But we definitely wanted to take it from levels 1 to 2 into 3, and in some cases be able to go on to 4. So just to give you we were wondering, should we show you the actual live platform? We said we probably don't have time to really dive into all that. So just to give you a snapshot of what each of the modules looks like. So in the problem solving course, there are 4 modules. They're all about 15 minutes each. And as Ashley said, that will, depend on a person's level of competence and confidence going into it in the first place. Some might take longer, some might finish it really quickly. We have used the language of the DigComp framework, so it is really easy to relate it back to the framework as well as to digital stepping stones. Each of the 21 modules follow the same structure, which is an introduction to what is digital competence in identifying digital competence in this sense, in this example. And then what is digital competence? How does one identify and address digital competence gaps? There's this assessment as learning throughout those, but then there's a practice section at the end and a wrap up and conclusion. And what we've done is we again use adult learning theory to produce learning outcomes based on the competence, which is relevant to adult educators to be able to relate the learning outcomes with programs or courses, program learning outcomes that they may need to achieve. We use Bloom's taxonomy for this. So the learning outcome verbs like recognize, identify, and develop are used throughout the 21 modules. So again, that makes it very relatable and understandable and accessible for educators to map it against programs or courses that they're trying to develop for. And again, for example, so safety, 4 lessons, 15 minutes each, following the same structure: introduction, what are cyber attacks, how to protect your device and digital skills, practice and conclusion. And again, the learning outcomes being based on Bloom's taxonomy. And it's very much designed really from a plain language perspective as much as we possibly could to root the context and the characters and the scenarios and situations very much in a relatable space for diverse communities across Ireland, reflective of different cohorts of people, and to really try to be as accessible as possible using, universal design for learning, plain language, all of these different approaches to really try to make that curriculum as say again?
I'd say interactive, a little bit interactive as well. It is.
Absolutely. So yeah, available on desktop and mobile. That's very important because, as we understand from insights, research, and feedback, not everybody has a PC, not everybody has a laptop. A lot of the people that we work with now are only using mobile phones. They struggle when you go near a PC or a laptop. So the majority of the adult, actually, I'd say the majority of the adult learners that we work with are very much mobile phone focused. There's a lot of skills development we have to do with them in terms of getting them to use actual PCs or laptops. So it is absolutely critical that it works as well on a mobile as a desktop device. Once a person completes a course, there's essentially Get Yourself Online is a learning management system. So it automatically produces a certificate of achievement. And this is really critical, again, for that growth mindset approach, which is, for a lot of people, this might be the first educational certificate of achievement they've achieved ever, or in a lot of cases in a very, very long time. It could be decades. And this really, really supports people. It really helps them. It fosters that sense of achievement and that growth mindset. And for a lot of people, as I said, this is where they really feel that they have achieved something. So I guess the next step after that, like a lot of work going on from the assessment to the national campaign to producing the curriculum on Get Yourself Online. We are now inspired by the great work Stefano is doing at the DigComp community practice. We decided to set out and create our own version of that for Irish educators in particular. And I'll hand over to Ashley now to talk you through it. And I know we're at almost 40 minutes, so we'll keep this quick.
Yes, 5 minutes to go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Stefano. Yeah, so this is the exciting part where we get to build around digital literacy community of practice. And as Mark said, really inspired by Stefano's DigComp community of practice. So it's the next step needed to ensure we reach those furthest behind and leave no one behind. It'll be hosted on An Cosán's Get Yourself Online platform. Although it's hosted there, you can't Google search it. It's not identified in Google. It's not in the search engines. So it's invite only. So what we're doing is trying to create a space in collaboration with those working across communities across Ireland. So anyone who signs up as a digital champion They'd receive training and they'd be asked to join the community of practice. We've just finished a pilot group there where we had 20 educators, and some people work in libraries, they might work in education training boards, they might work in schools. So they're from lots of diverse, they've lots of diverse different cohorts that they work with, and that was really important. So we're trying to co-create the space so that it is a space that works for them and the needs of their participants or those who they're working to support with. So we hope that with the space will be a space where they can connect, collaborate. It's a safe space. That's really important. And they can share knowledge around digital skills, teaching and learning, and we can problem solve and create their own new resources. So this is a snapshot of basically inside of the community of practice, what it looks like. So it's very much like a social media. It reminds me of Facebook, and that familiarity isn't a bad thing. Hopefully it's a good thing. So as I said, we just did a pilot group, and we did lots of usability testing with those different groups, and through that then we discovered then what information they wanted, what type of groups they wanted, what did they want to call each section, each space. So we just left it with groups where we had channels, and we changed that to groups because everybody understood what a group was. So we have a discussion group, an introduce yourself group, a resources group, and a news group we also have in there as well. And we encourage everybody who joins then to begin with introducing themselves. Our landing page, for example, we've created lots of tutorial videos explaining how to navigate. And we also have in the resources explaining how to access the resources and stuff. So we'd have digital stepping stones in there. But this part is not just about all of An Cosán's resources. It's about us sharing all of the resources that we all have access to, and having a space where we can connect with somebody who's working in a similar space that you are, so that you can access a resource, so you can ask a question and get supported around working your way, hopefully to meeting that 80% of everybody in Ireland with basic digital literacy skills by 2030. So now, Stefano, we didn't do too bad with the time now.
You did great.
We're not too bad, actually. So just like to thank Stefano and everybody for joining us today, and we can open it up for questions.
Right. Thank you very much, Aisling and Mark. And I just wrote in the chat, if anyone has any question for the speakers, that's the place where you can write them. And in the meantime, hoping that some of the participants have something to ask, I have a curiosity. My understanding is that your activity is mainly focused on training. So it's developing digital competence through training activities. Do you also, or how do you deal with what we call digital facilitation requests, in the sense people who lack the skills to do some specific activity? And would they come to you, or do you have in Ireland another parallel or similar network of sites, locations where citizens can go and get support, which might or not be associated with some a training proposal, more in terms like of solving a short-term need or addressing a specific issue? I don't know the situation in Ireland, so I was wondering, because this is something that very often is present as a need. So how do you deal with that?
I think, Stefano, that's our ambition, is to get to a place whereby there are those supports around Ireland for specific needs. That's really the ambition with the digital champions and the train the trainer and the community of practice space. It was interesting at our community of practice launch webinar, and this comes on the back of Advice NI's invitation for us to speak at their Digital Skills of Human Rights conference. One of the Advice NI digital champions, I found him really impressive in terms of the work he does, and we invited him to speak at our webinar to inspire our digital champions, because his job very much relates to that kind of a function, I guess, where he is specifically able to go out on Advice NI's behalf and support citizens in specific technical or skills-based issues that they're facing. And they deal with an awful lot of international protection applicants and migrants who don't have devices, they don't have skills, they don't have the language. And it was just really inspiring. What he is a retired IT professional, and he really goes above and beyond to go in and support these people who really need digital access, and digital access in itself being a survival skill now. So that's why we asked him to speak at our community of practice, because we don't have that in Ireland. And we would have a citizens advice network, but they wouldn't have the skills or competencies to provide that, which is it's an unusual model. Or from our perspective, Advice and I have a really interesting approach to that with their own digital champions. I think what's happening in Ireland is there's almost an expectation that libraries will come into that space, because that's where an awful lot of citizens go to get help on technical things like printing off a form. And I think particularly after COVID, there's a real growth in this idea of libraries being the local hub for those kind of supports, and to be able to come in at a community level, read some papers, access the internet, get some supports. And that's, as actually mentioned, some of our community practice members are librarians, in the library space as well. And I think that's the opportunity in Ireland, as well as with the community development and community education organisations. There's a network there that hopefully in the coming years will evolve into that kind of a space.
We do have some classes, but obviously it's just they are limited in space, and they're limited to like a local area of Tala where we are. So we do have like technology for terrified. We have a couple of different technology classes, and we've one for senior citizens. But I mean, it's, you'd have 20 is the max that we can have in that particular class. So that's why we're trying to reach into the different pockets and different communities, take up a digital champion with the right attitude. They don't necessarily have to have those super duper skills and knowledge. That's where the training comes in. Once you have the right attitude, we can train you up, give you the tools, give you the curriculum, because we're doing it already in An Cosán. So that's the plan.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Building it bottom up, basically, and through strong networking at the local level, which is, yes, probably the right way to go.
Absolutely.
We have a question here from Adele Augello, who is asking about if Get Yourself Online gives people the option to choose the language, so it can be used by Italian users who cannot speak English. And thank you for your inspiring presentation, she says also.
Thank you so much.
At the moment, I can say that it doesn't free. I'm sure it can be translated if you have the right plugins and the right software. At the moment, we don't have anything that you can go in and instantly change the language.
Okay. But I wonder if a search engine, if you went in through a certain search engine and you adapted, you can set the language on that. It might not work on all of the access or any of the kind of interactive pieces. Yeah. It's certainly something I think technology will allow us to kind of get there. Because
Microsoft Edge sometimes will allow you to go in or if you have an Outlook account, you can go in and you can set your settings to your preferred language, so that all websites that you open will open in your preferred language. But you would have to do that. It's not specific to going into get yourself online and clicking a button where you could do it, but there are other ways to do it.
Yes,
so we would in some, like with the Ukrainian people, like we've kind of looked at doing that.
I have done that, working with people from Ukraine, where they can go in to their Outlook account and go in and change the settings to their preferred language. So you can choose your preferred language, so that all websites you open up will open up in the language of your preference.
And I suppose to kind of, in a nutshell, we haven't tried to use it in Italian, but we'd be very interested if people do try and use it, to let us know how they get on.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Let me just quickly translate it into Italian. Quello che stanno dicendo è che il sito attualmente non consente di scegliere tipo l'italiano e di vedere tutti i contenuti in italiano, ma loro sarebbero molto interessati a sapere da qualcuno di voi che magari prova ad usarlo con dei sistemi di traduzione automatica, capire che cosa viene fuori, se funziona, dove ci sono dei blocchi eventualmente, se vi sembra che la qualità sia buona. Quindi sono interessati ad avere un vostro feedback su questo. I just tell them that you're interested to get feedback by any other language, in this case Italian, but could be any other participants from other language groups who might want to try and use your system with automatic translation tools. Yes, my experience in that is, for instance, unfortunately I speak no German, and I often have to navigate German websites, and sometimes it's great. I mean, you get perfect translation of almost everything. Other times, some content is translated, other parts are not. Typically, the user interface parts might not be translated. I think it also has to do with the kind of technology with which the web content is produced.
And it depends on the browser. So if you open up in Microsoft Edge, you can use the read aloud feature in Microsoft Edge, and you can change the preferred language in there. But like Mark said, some of the interaction, I already know that some of the interactive pieces, the flip cards, for example, may not. Yeah,
they're not, because images are
But the PDFs of the curriculum are there. Could be And again, like if there's interest in that, we could look at maybe, we'd love the feedback, and look, the curriculum's developed is what I would say. And if there are technological ways of adapting the language, we'd look at that by all means. We'd be happy to.
Okay. Yes, there are some comments in the chat always about this issue of translations and the limitations of existing automatic systems and so on. Okay, any other questions from participants about this experience? Of course, I will be very interested to hear and know about the development of your experience with a community of practice, because that's interesting. It's the second community of practice at local level, that national level, that I've heard of. One is yours now, and also in Germany, the association, the National Association of Adult Education Centers in Germany, set up a DigComp community of practice to put together all the adult educators who started working on dealing with digital skilling issues, to facilitate the exchange, collaboration, and so on. So it's the
same.
Yeah, it's something growing, and it's really nice. Very, very good experience.
And it's quite interesting because in the same way that we get asked what is digital inclusion, what is DigComp, we also get asked what is a community of practice. And to be really frank, Stefano, the work you've done in creating this DigComp community of practice has, as I said at the start, really inspired us in that. We understand exactly what it can do and how it works, but it's incredible to see how many people really don't understand the concept of a community of practice. And there is still a lot of work, I think, to do in that. But certainly the adult educators that we're engaging with, and there's a lot more work to be done to get the word out about that, see very quickly how community of practice can benefit them in their practice. So again, thank you.
I mean, it saves me having to individually email people that I'm working with or training with the resources and any updates. And so it's kind of one space where I can reach everybody and everybody can reach everybody else and reach out to people. I think if we can do a lot more when we work together collaboratively, we can make huge impacts. Impacts.
Yeah. There is a question which I don't really understand, repeated a few times. Do we need to sign up on your portal? We Italian are already using the Italian one, which is called, there is an Italian website, which is called Competenze Repubblica Digitale, blah, 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 which is a portal which also provides access to learning material based on DigComp and so on. I think that they're not the same thing. So yes, you probably have to, but now I don't understand which part of what, when you say we need to sign up to what?
Yeah, so there's three things. One doesn't need any sign up. That's digital stepping stones.
Okay, the test
tool.
Okay.
Second, get yourself online e-learning platform is where the courses are. Super for learners and for tutors. The third one is only a pilot phase.
Yeah. Sorry, and the learning platform is do you have to register for? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you do, and the reason why you have to register is because the system we use is recording your progress, so it can automatically generate a certificate. That is the only reason why we built in a registration process in there.
And just so that you could, if you're already halfway through a course,
you
can come back.
Pick up where you left off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Sì, quindi la registrazione al sistema, dunque per il test non è necessaria, per il sistema invece di apprendimento sì, perché la registrazione consente di tenere traccia del processo di apprendimento e alla fine di rilasciare il certificato di completamento. Ok, so okay, here more questions about the translation issue. According to you, with ChatGPT or Duck on Duck or Copilot, would we have better translations than using simply Google Translate? Maybe for languages more complex like Chinese or Slavic languages. I don't know if you have any opinion on this, but
again, I think I'd be very interested to see. We haven't even thought of ChatGPT. We're loving ChatGPT ourselves, and really, it's really kind of starting to see the potential, the opportunities. But I would have thought something like ChatGPT, if you have the basic text, so that's where maybe the PDFs would come in on that. That you could have the PDF of the actual curriculum. You could run that through ChatGPT, and that would probably give you as accurate as any other technology would in whatever language. I don't know though. I haven't tried it.
Okay, great. And there is a message here from Elzbieta Abramovich, who says, thank you for this inspiring presentation, very impressive. I will try your test, and as we also introduce tests based on DigComp in my organization, I'm very curious to compare the results. And we also have quite a successful digital skills community of practice. So Elisabetta, I'm very curious also to hear more about this experience you're doing. So if you're willing, just contact me, send me an email through the community of practice. Actually, I should share with you the link for those who might be interested to register to the DigComp community of practice, which is the European one, let's say. Here is the link where you find the registration. And I would be interested to hear about what you have been doing. Okay, so I think the time has finished, and I want to thank again Mark and Aisling for your very interesting contribution. As I said at the beginning, I will share the slides that were presented and the recording of this webinar on a public folder on the DigComp. We will send a link to it to all participants. So just wait maybe 1 or 2 days for that. Okay. Thank you very much. And let's keep in touch. Okay.
Thank you again,
Thanks
Stefano.
so much, Stefano.
Everyone have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank
you too. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.